Hello, I'm Scott. Welcome to the 9th and final video in our table modeling series in Maya. So far what we've done here is we've spawned in a cube. I'm just going to go into object mode. We've spawned in a cube. With that cube we've beveled off the corners, and then we've sorted out the geometry from that. We've beveled the edges. We've spawned in a torus. We've reduced its geometry right down. We've applied bevels to the inside and outside curves on it. We've then beveled the edges. We've combined those two meshes and we've used the fill hole and bridge tool to rebuild the geometry. We've then spawned in a polyprimitive cube. We've socketed that to the top here so it's exactly where we need it. We've beveled it off and we've duplicated it equidistantly around the model and combined everything together. We've then used a series of planar and cylindrical unwraps and cut and stitch tools to rebuild the UVs on it so that we've got this nice even and neat UV map. And today what we're going to do is we're going to go over some of the export settings for this and things that you want to do just before you export your model for making it ready for a game engine. Just before we start as well, I'm just going to say any hotkeys used in this series or in my previous barrel modeling series are all noted in the video description. So if you're ever wondering what the hotkeys are, what the buttons are for them, what the function of them is, or what the circumstances are to make that hotkey work, you can find all of that in the video descriptions below. Now just to get started, I'm still in my UV editor and I'm just going to quickly show you how you export your UV map as a PNG. So you want to right click and you want to go to UV shell and you want to select all of the UV shells. You now want to go to image and you want to come down to UV snapshot. So we're going to click on that and it's going to bring up this little window. I'm just going to move this over. I'm going to pick out a file location. So I'm going to save it into my folder for here, and we're going to give it a naming convention. So I'm going to call it UV underscore table, and I'm going to hit save on that. The next thing we want to do is we want to change this image format from a Maya IFF file and we want to make it a PNG file. Now we want to pick our X and Y size. You want to keep these the same because it's going to be a square image, so if you distort this it's going to distort the image. So 2K is a good resolution to work in because you can always downscale if needed later, but it gives you plenty of room to apply detail. After that we want to just leave all these other settings the same and we want to hit apply and close, and that's going to save off our UV map as a PNG image that you could open in Photoshop. So I'm going to hit apply and close on that, and that's that done. The next thing we're now going to do is we're going to go to object mode and we're just going to come up to Windows again. We're going to click on this and we're going to put our workspace back to the modeling standard. So we're going to click that now in Windows, and that's going to get rid of the UV window because we don't need that anymore. My eye's going slow again, apologies. Now that we're back to here, we want to get rid of the checker material from our model because we don't want to export that. So to do that, we click on the hypershade window again, this little blue olive with a white circle on it. We're going to click that. We're going to drag it back into frame and we're just going to right click on Fong 1 and assign initial shading group to selection. And as long as our mesh is what is selected, it's going to apply that material back to the mesh, and we can close the hypershade now. The next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to open up the outliner and give this object a name. So to do that, we go to Windows again, we come down to outliner and we click on this, and it's going to spawn this little side menu. And we're going to double click on the one that has this little 4 squares next to it, and we're just going to call it SM for static mesh because it's not going to move. We're going to have an underscore because we don't use spaces. We're going to call it table underscore 01 in case there's more than one table in the game that we're making. We're just going to click now and that's going to lock that in. So the reason that we're using naming conventions here is that even in Maya you might work on this file but you might hand it over to someone else later, and if there's a bunch of different things in here it's really easy to pick out what's what if everything has sensible names and everything's named appropriately. When we export as well, when we use naming conventions, that's to help anyone else who has to pick that work up after you. So if you're handing a model over to a level builder or a level designer and everything's just named cube 1, table final and things like that, it's really difficult to figure out what is what and what's to be used in each version of the build. So for this we're just going to export with another sensible naming convention in a bit, but it's good to do this as you go as well. Next we're going to want to go back up to Windows again because we're going to want to delete the history off of our model. So we're going to click that, we're going to go to Windows and we're going to go to General Editors, and we're going to have to bring in the Channel Box Layer Editor again. Now we had that before, but when we've came back into Maya Modeling Standard it's gotten rid of that. So we just need to bring this in. Mine has appeared off screen. So we can drag this in, and if we just drag it over the top of the modeling toolkit words here and we drop it, it's going to appear like so. Now we're going to leave that just for now because there's a couple other things we want to check before we delete that history. The first is that we want to make sure our model is facing positively down the X direction. So to check that, we select the model, we hit W, and we can see here the table's facing along the X like so. So we're going to leave that as it is, but the pivot needs edited as well. The reason we want things facing positively down the X direction is if all your models face on a consistent direction, when you put it into the game engine, everybody knows exactly what way is the front on the model, how things are meant to sit and look as well. On top of that, it removes the need to apply rotations or any sort of edits to the model in engine just to get things facing the right way around and such, or it lessens the need for that. We're going to now move the pivot point on the model. So to do that, we're going to tap D, and we want the pivot to be on the base so that the model moves on its base. So we're going to hold V key for point snap, and we're just going to zoom in a bit, and we're going to drag this pivot on the Y-axis only to the base point on the whole model, which is the lowest vertex point on that bottom bevel on the feet. If we move our camera, we can see that the pivot's perfectly centered, which is where we want it. So if we tap D again to leave the pivot, the next thing we're now going to want to do is freeze the transformations on the model. So if we go into the attribute editor, we can see here that these are all already frozen, but it's good practice just to always double check by just going to modify and clicking freeze transformations. Now what this does is, if I apply a 45-degree Y rotation, this value is going to be carried through. So every time this is placed in engine, the engine is going to place the model, then it's going to rotate it 45 degrees to the Y. If we freeze transformations, it makes this the new 0 value for the model, which cuts out processing power being used on all those like little calculations as we go. So we want this to be facing like so, and we want to freeze transformations on it so that all of these are back to 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, all 1 on the scale and all 0 on the shear. Now that we've done that, we now want to delete the model's history. So we're going to come into the channel box layer editor, we're going to hit edit, we're going to come down and we're just going to click delete history. The reason we're doing this is because if we export the model now, it's going to export this huge list of all the operations we applied to the model with it, and that can cause real issues later down the line, so we don't want that. So we're going to hit delete history and get rid of all of that, so it's a completely clean mesh now. I'm just going to press Q to get rid of the scale tool there. So now the only thing we've got left is that we want to export the model as an FBX file. So to do that, we want the model selected, we want to come up to File, and we want to use Export Selection. The reason we want that and not Export All is because if we use Export All, it's going to export inside the FBX file these 5 cameras we've used, the FBX mesh, and 2 light sets, and we only want to take the model. So we're going to select the model only, we're going to go to File, we're going to go Export Selection, and mine has appeared off screen, so I'm just going to set the file location for this, and I'm going to give it a naming convention. So I'm going to pull this back in, and we're going to call it SM underscore table underscore 01. Now you can expand naming conventions for whatever fits. So this could be a table in a kitchen, so we could call it SM underscore kitchen underscore table. This way, anyone who picks up this asset goes, okay, that table is to be used in the kitchen and not a table for in a workshop, say. And we can use these to help differentiate between what we're doing. So now we're just going to click Export Selection, but first we're just going to double check that the file type is set to FBX or OBJ also works. So we're just going to click that now and hit Export. Now that we've done that, that's us totally done. Our mesh is finished, our UV map's exported as a PNG, the mesh has been cleaned up for export, and just to double check that, I'm just going to delete the object and we're just going to import it again. So we're just going to go to File, we're going to import the FBX, and I'm just going to bring this over, and we're just going to come down, and it's kitchen table 01, and I'm just going to click Import, and there we go, it's spawned perfectly in the center, and it's going to pivot exactly where we want it to pivot on its base. It's going to move based on its center. That's exactly what we want it to do. So thank you for watching, and I hope this has been helpful, and I'll hopefully see you in the next video series. Thank you.